In a world full of misery, rage, and insomnia, there's a place you can go to just unwind. All you have to do is take a long walk into the mountains, and just past the black house, the secret garden, you'll find a small cabin. Inside that cabin, you'll find the Hole in the Wall Book Club. So now that the dream catcher's hung and the fire started, we invite you to pull up a chair and join the Losers Club as we explore the world of dirty pillows and 10-cent root beers. Welcome back to Hole in the Wall Book Club, starring Anthony. That's not how we start this show. This is Hole in the Wall Book Club. Welcome back. I'm Anthony.
This is Alex.
And today we are doing part two of Carrie. I think last time we said we were going to do like part 2 and then part 3, but part 3 is like 6 pages, 8 pages, something like that. And we decided to do it in the wrap-up episode next week.
It'll be the lore.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff.
Yeah, we basically realized that like if we put it on the end of this, we're just going to skim it. If we put it at the beginning of the next one, it's going to lead naturally into a lot of our being way too overanalyzing the Stephen King cinematic universe, as we coined it.
Well, not just cinematic.
Well, I mean, it's cinematic in our minds.
Yeah.
What am I going to call this? The Stephen King literary universe? Is that what it's? The SKLU?
It's just the Stephen King verse.
SKLU? I don't know.
Kingverse.
Kingverse? Okay, well, yeah. Well, let's get into this. So, where we last left off, local heartthrob, Tommy Ross, had passed away. And
it basically ended with us seeing from the sort of outside perspective, Carrie starting it.
Right. And then we jump right into a news report. It was like AP news report. And it was basically school done blown up. People are dead. Things are bad. It wasn't much. So I read this a while ago. So, and you've read it more recently. So if I'm missing major details, I didn't remember much in that other than setting the tone. I think
that's basically what it did.
There's a couple of these news reports. I don't remember what happens, but like you start getting information about like other local cities sending out fire department.
They're often letting you know something slightly before it happens in a generic sense.
Yeah. And then from there we jump to Sue again. And this is her in her house, and
hadn't she already started to like head out before this? This is like her actually going out.
Yeah, I'm thinking about I'm jumping back to the beginning of part 2 is what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, this is when she is on the way out because she wrecks the car somehow off the road.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what caused it, but then she ends up seeing the school explode.
Yeah, and it's her standing in the street, seeing the school explode. Yeah. I just pulled up my notes, and I guess the one thing we got out of the news report was that the fire hydrants all across the town were blowing off water.
Yeah, they keep it's not even forced. They keep telling you something that's just going to be, Carrie's going to do that.
Yeah,
hey,
that's kind of been this book the whole time.
It's just going to be right before Carrie's going to do it.
The AP news report ended with, and it's kind of weird. Things like this just seem to happen whenever Carrie gets upset. Yeah, we get Sue seeing the school explode, and it's kind of just placing her in the middle of the town.
Yeah.
And then from there, we jump to yet another type of excerpt that we're going to see repeated, which is the Testimonies. And is it explicit who is
I don't remember
taking
if it says
testimony?
Who, but it just because it says something like one person calls them a commissioner or something. Like, Sue, she's the final person interviewed, and she calls him something that seems like a title.
Right,
but
I think it was off. I think this might have been the White Commission.
They are the White Commission, which is the name of the commission, and they are themselves the something of Maine. They had a title.
Gotcha.
The White Commission is the name of this particular activity, but they actually are some part of Maine's government.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And they're the ones running the investigation. We've gotten a couple excerpts from there, but things start to heat up here. And I think the first person introduced is Thomas K. Quillen, who's the town drunk. And I kind of love this guy. Because he's giving his testimony, and basically he's in the jail when this all goes down. Because he has a standing agreement with the sheriff that if he gets drunk enough that he starts feeling fighty, he just goes and checks himself in, sleeps it off in the cell. And I kind of love this guy. He had a quote, and I don't remember what the context was, but it stood out to me, and I had to share it. It was, a Frenchman's idea of pulling a fast one is looking at his own cards. And that got me. That got me. He basically sees Carrie walking down the street, and this is...
Because he steps out of... Is he still in the building looking out a window, or I think he steps out?
He either steps out or looks out the way. I don't remember
it seems like
exactly.
Because every one of these White Commission interviews are all about someone on the street seeing Carrie.
Right.
These are all to get eyewitness accounts of Carrie, which... That's kind of amusing in its own right, because you'll find that the theme here often is that they can't even see her well. It's actually with him we first see this instance of it. When it gets to the interviewing him about Carrie, he begins to describe how Carrie felt and what Carrie was doing. And when pressed, how do you know this? He just goes, you know. It just... it just appears as if Carrie projects her feeling out in this huge bubble around
and,
her.
He even points out that, he sees someone walking down the street, and they're like, did you recognize her, them? And he goes, yeah, it was Carrie. They're like, did you know Carrie? He's like, no, I've never met her before. I'm like, well, how'd you know it was her? It's like,
could you even see her well?
Carrie.
No. Yeah, exactly.
I just knew it's Carrie.
You keep seeing that. Everyone in town, and actually Sue at the end super emphasizes this.
Right.
But everyone in these interviews all just... Actually, even people not necessarily in the interviews, they reference a few people just in the story. Carrie's just flinging her emotions off herself.
Right.
So if you're within a certain bubble of her, you not only can tell how she feels, but that it's Carrie and what Carrie's intent is.
And I have to say, once again, to reintroduce my experience, I read this way back in high school, and I did not remember this part of TK at all. And I was delighted because... I'm going to do this in a little bit, but I got a lot to say about this and Dreamcatcher, the linchpin of the Stephen King universe. I got a lot here. And this connection thing. I think it was in this scene, Thomas tells us about Carrie blowing up fire hydrants, basically. Because I think this is where we get a scene that pulled up a great picture in my mind, which was Carrie standing behind a fire hydrant, or standing in front of a fire hydrant, when all three caps on the sides and the top blew off at the same time, and this big crucifix of water behind her.
Yeah.
So we see this again later, and this is something that happens a lot, where we get here's the testimony, now let's jump back into the scene, and we get internal monologues and such.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I just wanted to point out that was a cool visual, that crucifix of water, or the cross of water.
Well, leading up to that, I guess we have to point out, because that's actually what's described when she gets out on the road. In part 2, you see her intently. It jumps to her perspective.
Right. That's, I think, the next section. I think they mention the crucifix of water from Thomas's perspective. Then we jump back into Carrie.
I don't think it was in his perspective.
It might. I know he mentions them exploding. I couldn't remember where.
Yeah, I think the imagery is when it gets to her getting Carrie.
Okay,
there,
so let's jump back into that because we jump back from there to
Carrie, but in school, finally from her perspective.
Right.
It describes her emotions as she gets as she goes up on the stage, as she gets doused. She says that she at first doesn't even conceive of it being blood. She's just freaked out why she's covered in something. Then someone shouts blood. She still won't open her eyes. There's this constant emphasis that she refuses to open her eyes and basically just tries to, if I keep ignoring it, it'll go away. And it's not until someone laughs that she finally breaks, opens her eyes, realizes she's covered in blood. Then the laughter spreads, and that's what she cracks. Jumps off the stage, feels like she was going to fall, but doesn't. Runs out. Miss DeGeneration, the gym coach, goes over trying to help her. She uses her powers without even thinking, flings her back, smacks her in the wall, actually. She seems like she could be a bit injured. Flees for the door. Someone sticks their foot out, and she trips over it. But she says she expects to be kicked in the butt, but isn't.
Right.
She, on her hands and knees, describes it as being Jacob-like. On her hands and knees, flees out of the
and this,
school.
We know from the We Survived the Black Prom section, she describes Carrie falling, and this is where people really just uproariously laughed. And she describes it as a laughing at a funeral, tension-breaking thing, but seeing it from Carrie's perspective, it's completely reframed.
Yeah. No, it's just the apex, as she will say later. This is the apex trick. Carrie interprets this as, I've been finally beaten. This is how I've been humiliated to the extreme.
Right.
But she gets out. She flees a good bit before she finally stops and then realizes that she wants to get them back.
Because she falls again.
Yeah. And she just kind of wallows there for a while. And then she suddenly has a snap. Wait, I have powers.
Oh, yeah, flex.
Wait, I remember when I shoved the coach. Wait, I can go do this. You know what? They're going to get it back. And so she storms all the way back to the school. Easily, they constantly emphasize how easy it is for her to hold the doors. Holds the doors. Says that, goes through the loop of, they'll have their dress ruined like mine. Seems pretty innocent. I'm going to keep it even with it.
I loved this part because this was almost like we've talked about, and we didn't get it much in this book, but we've talked about like the thing that King does really well is slow escalation. And this was his kind of escalation just done very, very quickly. Because like the whole time I'm holding out hope here, like, okay, Carrie's just going to overreact. This is going to be, things got wild, but we see her thought process, and it's like...
Well, actually, if you want to get even more about this point, this is where we split, actually. When we both were describing how we thought Carrie was going to go, I think earlier in the podcast, you were thinking that she may have some saving grace, and maybe it's only the school, and maybe it's actually just a controlled event. And I thought that she just maybe went full demon mode. Do you mind if I walk through the
thought process here? Because I loved the way it was. Because she slams the door shut, and... we saw this from the other side. There's kids yelling, trying to get out, and Carrie just kind of sits there and smiles and looks through. And then there's a lot of...
Well, she starts a good bit of it before she's even smiling through. It actually describes her as remembering the pipes, because only when she gets to the window can she see the pipes better and actually activate more of the water.
Yeah, because she decides... Her thought process is, I'm going to break the sprinklers, I'm going to flood the thing with water, and I'm going to ruin their dress and hair. And at this point, I'm like... Okay, cool. We know the water started the fire. Maybe she just fucked up. Maybe it was... And then she, does this, and then she sees the first the guy grab the mic stand or whatever it was, and he gets fried. And then she goes, oh, right, electricity. I'm just gonna kill everybody. And reaches out and mind flexes and just brings down all the electric. So she just... headlong choice. I'm gonna be a villain now. Let's do it.
In very crude terms, though, too. It's it describes in her mind. She's just like fire, water, electricity, power. The way she rationalizes doing it is very simply like this and this makes this. This will kill them. I will kill them. It's not even this particularly
time to be an avenging angel.
Yeah, it's not even, and you'll see that theme actually start to come out later. I think we mentioned this earlier, the relationship of the impact her mom has on her, that even though she keeps butting her heads with her mom, she still keeps this sort of biblical mentality. Right. This vengeance thing, this I'm going to get back at everyone. We kind of mentioned that having that tone.
Yeah, we had the pictures in the house where she's looking at all these pictures of avenging Jesus and avenging God. And she's like, I like the one with the lamb. I like when he's being all peaceful. And now she's made the switch of hold on, I'm a fucking sword.
This is also the callback to when she mentioned how she wanted Jesus to come down with rocks and club everyone's head. You've been getting a crap ton of foreshadowing of she's been building and building and building, and it's at this point when she says she's going to burn them all that you not just see that moment is when it switches, but this is when she switches in her mind to, I'm going to take the retribution that I think everyone deserves from God into my own hands.
Right.
I'm going to be the one who judges and punishes everyone in this town.
Yeah, because from there, she leaves the school. It's on fire. I think, at one point, she stops focusing on the door, and they make a point that people slip, start pushing the door up, and she just slams it shut again. I think, hits someone's fingers.
Oh, yeah, it's child's play to hold them, because all she has to do is imagine the doors, and they're locked. She does lose consciousness of them for a second when she's kind of outside on the grass, kind of sitting there. Yeah, she even names the person specifically, but someone's finger gets completely cut off.
Yeah. And
it's actually at this point we're actually just almost about when she starts the fire hydrant thing.
Yeah, and before we get into that, I just want to say this scene, I love this whole rampage scene, but this first half, just the school bit, I loved the writing. This is why I like Stevie. And I don't like being this complimentary 2 times in a row, but don't worry, I'm gonna dunk on someone today. But I'm gonna be nice to Stevie Kings at the same time, so I don't know, it's a wash really. But you want to go through the rampage from there, or?
Well, it's basically the actual story is just the rampage, and it's just interjected with the interviews mainly the interviews with the jump for Chris and Billy, the two perpetrators of the blood stuff.
Right.
And
okay, like immediately after this, she goes down, and that's where we get the explanation for the fire hydrants. Because we've seen them start to explode through the last testimony.
Yeah.
But here we get the logic of her being like, oh, I hear, fire siren, or...
The fire whistle.
Yeah,
it's
the fire whistle.
It's the big town
Right.
whistle. It actually describes it at first. She covers her face because she freaks her out, and then she goes, "Oh, fire whistle!"
And it's such a reactive, childish logic, but it's just like, oh, they're gonna put out the fire as started. No, and she just starts opening up fire hydrants, just drain the entire town of water pressure.
And this is where she pops all three of them, that it gives that water crucifix kind of form.
Yeah, and that was I just loved that scene. I don't know if that scene's in the movie. I hope, because that'd be such a good visual. But yeah, because
it's actually at this point she does that, and then it cuts into her seeing the gas station, getting sort of a look on her face, kind of thought, and then that's I think when we get the next.
Yeah,
thing.
Cora
cuts away from
Cora
her too.
Simmered, I think is the name. Oh wait, no, that is before then. Sorry, I scrolled down in my notes.
This is the sheriff. Is that how?
Yep. It's when he runs into Sue, because we get two sheriff scenes in a row.
Right.
The first one's him running into Sue,
and that's honestly pointless both in story and out.
It wasn't much. It was basically an opportunity for us to see Sue's super connected to Carrie.
And for the sheriff to kind of go, "You're being a little loony. Let me go check."
He slaps her.
Yeah. To knock her out of it, which he describes later in the interview as having calmed her.
Right. Which is great, because in the next scene, he slaps someone as well. I actually have written my notes.
Slapping actually shows up a lot in this last part.
Yeah.
Whether it be abusively done or whether it be to calm someone down.
So, he runs into Sue. She's freaking out. He slaps her to calm her down, like you do. And then I have a note here. And this is where I lost all faith in Otis Doyle as a sheriff and a human being. He doesn't know who Tommy is. He does not know who noted heartthrob Tommy Ross is. Like, come on. It's just, Sue's like, yeah, this is Carrie. Carrie is doing this. And sheriff's like, what? Why? What's going on? She's like, Tommy's dead. And he's like, who's Tommy? And she's like, noted heartthrob Tommy Ross. Come on. And then from there, we jump to another. I actually can't remember. I wasn't certain when reading because it's another scene with Doyle. Because we jump to Vic Mooney. He was in the prom. He gets out, and it's basically him getting slapped by the sheriff. Because God, he loves to slap.
I have to point that out. Speaking of, you think getting out would be weird considering the situation. There's that key moment when Carrie is at the school where she mentions that people are getting out of certain fire exits, and she chooses not to block them.
Yeah, she just doesn't care.
Yeah.
And basically he fills in Doyle, he gets slapped. It's not much of a scene.
It's just another instance of Doyle not wanting to believe how absurd what's happening is.
Yeah, and I believe we also get like Vic knowing things Carrie was thinking. Again, we get this.
Oh, yeah.
Just assume throughout the rest of the book, if someone's being interviewed or talking to the cops, they're going to mention it at some point.
Yeah, it becomes more and more of a thing till it's just an absolute fact that anyone around Carrie knew what she was thinking.
Right. Which, I'm trying to save it all. I have so much Dreamcatcher stuff to talk about. Because, that's Alien Tactics 101. Yep. Group telepathy. Alien Tactics 101. But from there, we
get the news report that basically talks about the gas mains blowing. And I believe also the calling in fire stuff from like out of town.
And that's there was that one bit in the early Sue scene where
I believe she sees the cigarette she goes, "Oh no," as she sees someone flick a cigarette out the window, which is actually what hits the gas, which detonates the Audico gas station. He, for some reason, is obsessed with this name. He keeps telling you this is the name of this gas station, to such an extent that in story, when Chris and Billy are hanging out, someone miscalls the gas station by the wrong name, and Billy corrects them. And you're like, why are you so obsessed with this gas station and its name?
Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, if I did any research for the shows I produce, I would have looked into that. But no. The farthest I'll go in research is looking up the openings to shows that are not the thing we're focusing on. That's about the extent of my willingness for this.
All right.
If I remember correctly, I don't remember what vehicle it was, but I think the cigarette was thrown out of some emergency vehicle. I can't remember if it was
Yeah, I think it might have been
an ambulance
on the
or
way.
yeah. And I just enjoyed that a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. And then in that news report, we're also getting like, I believe at this point there's rolling blackouts and there's a lot of infrastructure problems caused by power lines down, explosions taking out stuff, and the water pressure in the whole town being down. So it's basically being like, yeah, people are trying to help, but no one can talk to anyone to coordinate. It's basically, this is 100% a clusterfuck at this point.
And actually, for a good bit of the next chunk of this story, it's actually just that. It's basically Carrie starts ruining you were left with her having seen the gas station. You're given the little bit that it blows up. She is, of course, cuts back to her. She is, of course, the one who sees them, starts destroying the gas stations to cause the explosions. It then leads into her bringing power lines down because she's become very fascinated with this way people look when they're getting zapped.
Right.
And she brings all the power lines down to the point where it's just dangerous to walk the street at all. They even describe some of the power lines just falling on a house and catching the house on fire.
And like, she has such a childlike approach to things at this point. It's like, hey, I remember when that guy got zapped a few minutes ago. Let's do more of that. Zap, zap, zap. And like, something triggers an idea, and you normally see where that trigger comes from, and then she's like, ooh, I like that, more of that, let's do it. And it's super simple, but it's really well written. I really enjoyed this.
And as
whole rampage.
When she eventually comes to approach her mom, you'll see the child thing to its fullest extent, because despite how her mom behaves, she completely falls to her at first. But yeah, she downs the power lines. This is where there's a crossover. We're not exactly sure. I can't remember exactly where it fell in, but essentially there's a interview again with the White Commission with Cora. Is that the name?
Yeah, but right before that happens, we see Carrie at the church.
I'm pretty sure it's like we see their interview, and then as the interviews always work, the interview occurs before the actual action is shown to us.
I think that was the one that was different.
Because the Carrie one, because there's the power lines, which is how they kill themselves. And then Carrie actually comes out of the church because the next thing is actually Margaret. We still have the whole her walking to...
Right. There's, you get a little bit, I believe... go ahead. I'll double check. You're fine.
It basically like woven in, and then you get the interview, the White Commission interview with Cora. It's essentially, she hears about something, then opens her door and immediately bumps into a neighbor who's a friend of hers. Finds out that something happened at the school. She's terrified because of her daughter. She was staying up all night to wait for her daughter to get home. They both flee, and they make a point that she slips on possibly even her neighbor's slippers. She wasn't paying attention. She should have put on real shoes. And they flee out into the street. And on the way towards the school, they catch sight of Carrie opening out of the church. At first, she makes the comment, oh, maybe someone was in there praying for God's help. And then when they realize it's Carrie, they're like, there's no way that's what she was doing. And I think this is when they witness Carrie doing some of the freaky shit with the power lines. She actually brings them down there. This is then when they, I believe you had mentioned this earlier off podcast, which was Cora states that what happens if there are more Carries.
Oh, yeah. It's the last line of that, or not the last line, but it's near the last line of the interview. I had pulled the quote here. And this is where I think the greater tone of the book changed for me, was this point. It was, what happens if there are others like her? What happens to the world? And that becomes we're not going to get deep in, we're not going to do part 3 today, but a little preview on that. That is a big focus.
Yeah,
in part 3.
The effect of the White Commission and the angle they take versus Shadows Exploded's paper, they take two massively different stances on that exact idea. So
right. Part 3 sets up a sequel.
Yeah.
Basically.
So they see that. The two women together decide that they need to get to school, but the friend who she bumped into, I forget her name, not Cora, not the one doing the interview, but the friend she bumps into, decides to just book it. Georgette. She just decides to gun it across the street. She's like, if I run fast enough, I won't hit the wires. We can get there. And before she can stop Georgette books it and just ends up right on a live wire and fries herself.
Which delights Carrie. We're not shown that, but we assume. Yeah. We know Carrie at this point.
And so, of course, Cora freaks out, but then goes, okay, focus is, I have to go get to my daughter. I have to go see if she's alive. So she slowly steps over wires and past bodies, and then she gets to this big batch where multiple wires are all there, and she recalls this children's game of Big Step. I've never heard of this, but taking a big step and then going, may I? It's just, once again, referencing the game, I don't know. But she takes the big step, and she describes that her slipper is less than an inch from the live wire when she makes the step, but she makes it over. And when she's finally past the wire, she just books it. And that's essentially the end of her.
And I want to read a section of this, the interview here, because I have it open, and it explains how everyone does this with Carrie. It's White. Had you ever seen Carrie White before? No, she was not one of my daughter's friends. Obviously, Carrie doesn't have friends. Had you ever seen a picture of Carrie White? No. And in any case, it was dark and you were in church. Yes, sir. Miss Simard, how did you know it was Carrie White? I just knew. This knowing, Miss Simard, was it like a light going on in your head? No, sir. What was it like? I can't tell you. It faded away the way a dream does. So, I just wanted to point that out. Like, every interview has something.
Yeah,
like
every
that.
interview, and then as you see it peppered through the actual story, everyone just knows when she's around. Yeah,
and
actually, it makes a big deal towards the end because towards the end with Carrie, the bubble shrinks for a reason. If you will.
Right. So, the scene from Carrie's perspective is basically her reveling in destruction.
Yeah. Drops everything, pops every hydrant, blows up every tank. Cuts every wire. She's just wrecking everything.
And like, there's a bit where, she sees people getting away from her, but she just doesn't care. And she just turns and heads to home after the church bit. And there is a part in this bit that I just loved this scene in general. I think it's one of the best scenes in the book. But it introduces it with, I believe, her mom's praying. She got that knife and she's praying. And then the plaster sayings on the wall, like the little churchy sayings, just start exploding one by one. It gives you the line.
Specifically describes that she's on a stool and she's holding the butcher knife on a fold of her dress to hide it.
Right.
At first.
If you want to go into this, there's a very specific quote I want to find from this part.
So Carrie starts to terrorize the house on the inside before she even gets to the door. It describes the cuckoo clock dropping, paintings falling off the wall, those things exploding. Everything's getting wrecked around her mom as she's approaching the house. Eventually, the front door just flies open, and she goes, "Mama!" This is where you fully get to see the mentality that Carrie has, because she completely reduces herself back down to mom's little girl. Mm-hmm. She walks in.
I want to point out, there is a bit in one of the walks. I don't remember if it's the walk, if it's right before this, or if it's during the walk to the church. During that walk, we get this thing with her like musing through, like, okay, what can I do from here? And she's like, I could go back and live with mama and be like, praying in the closet all the time. Well, that sounds terrible. Well, the only other option is to kill literally everyone. And I just want to point out that bit of logic.
The way I remember her framing it was that it was more, I think it wasn't ever feasible in the first place, because the way she kind of frames it is, I could escape back to my mom's house. I could run back to my mom, and then I would never leave my mom's house again. Right. And I could pretend none of this happened, and I could just. And then she realizes in just this very simple words: the closet, the praying, and she suddenly realizes everything that's involved in doing that, and she can't stand it, and is like, "That's not the option I'm taking. I'm just gonna go Hail Mary this and go out, taking everything with me." Which is something Sue repeats constantly.
Right.
The idea that Carrie's taking everyone with her.
Right. So we've got that whole bit. Interrupted. I don't know where we are.
Yeah. Blasted in the door. Goes to mama. Asks, kind of gives up to her mom. Is like, I don't know what to do. Mama, can you help me? Da da da. And then her mom.
That's when her mom reveals the question blatantly. we've been. Did she have sex, or does she, obviously she had sex, but does she actually not remember it? Has she deluded herself so much into it, or she just lied?
And specifically the whole framing of the device of this is that she's just stating every step at which she had considered killing Carrie.
Right.
She starts it by going, the first time it just miscarriage. Yeah, because they mentioned they guessed it was a miscarriage. Her very first time is a miscarriage. She states that it was taken away from her and they were fine. She was lucky. The first one did not actually conceive.
They gave in to sin, and then...
the second time, she describes that... it seemed like he forced himself on her, essentially.
So basically,
they start to push it. She tells him to get the hell out. He wanders the street. She pictures him pondering his sin. She envisions he's walking up and down the sidewalk, forgiveness. But when he returns home, he's got liquor on his breath.
He's stinking of whiskey.
Yeah, and he just kind of makes it happen.
I've got it right here. And he took me with the stink of filthy roadhouse whiskey still on him. He took me. And I liked it.
Bold letters, I liked it, yeah.
Yeah,
Your filthy hands.
I liked it, all that dirty fucking and his hands all over me. Mama. Yeah, and it's basically, we had sex once and God punished me and then he raped me.
And this is where we start the countdown to killing you by killing you with the knife. I think how did she say it? I fumbled back, I stepped back. She uses a key word over and over again when she
thinks about killing herself, and then
what is the? She uses some word over and over again to describe her failing to kill Carrie.
Backslid.
Her backslid. Each time she calls it a backslide. Yeah, she's like, I was going to stab you with this very knife, and I backslid. I was going to kill you in the crib, but I backslid. I was going to kill you when you first used your powers, and I backslid. And she basically keeps admitting that every time she knew she should, in her mind, should have killed Carrie, she just couldn't do it. No matter how awful she seems as a mom, she actually couldn't kill her at all.
Right. And I love this line. This whole scene was great, but this line of, I came to kill you, Mama, and you were waiting here to kill me. Mama, it's not right, Mama. It's not. And that's when Mama says, let's pray. And Carrie does, which actually surprised the hell out of me. And then Mama stabs the hell out of her.
It actually describes her as supplicating. She falls down on her knees and actually holds her hands up like above her head, like asking her mom to help. Yeah, and then it describes that her mom pulls the knife, comes down on her, and Carrie, if only out of the corner of her eye, spots it, dodges it. So instead of it going directly in her back, it ends up in her shoulder, all the way to the hilt.
Yeah.
So it's sticking out the front, probably.
And that's where Carrie just gets intense, because I think her next line is, I'm going to give you a present, Mama.
Yeah.
And
then just proceeds to slow her heart, describing it. Slower. Your skin will, your fingers will turn alabaster. Slower. The blood will drain from your arms. Slower. And each time her mom starts the Lord's Prayer, and it just starts slowly fumbling out of her mouth.
But a couple of my favorite bits for this, because it jumps between her mom saying part of the Lord's Prayer and Carrie just taunting. And it starts, one of the early ones is, a little slower, Mama. Do you know what the present is, Mama? What you always wanted. Darkness and whatever God lives there. What a line. I love that line.
The thing is, I don't even know if Carrie's taunting her there. I think that's what you would think if you were doing that.
That's true.
I kind of get the feeling that it's like, it's actually Carrie kind of going, at this apex point where we're going to kill each other, I'm going to give you the thing you look like you've wanted all. Like, she's being compassionate, not really, but she might actually think that this is what her mom wanted, because her mom just sat in front of her and told her, I've been trying to kill myself and you for the past several years, and it's failed.
That's true.
And Carrie's basically going, okay, you've already probably killed me by doing this. I'm going to go ahead and kill you, and we'll end all of this, just like you wanted.
The thing that makes me lean a bit towards taunting is one of my favorite line in this scene is, your feet and hands like marble, like alabaster, white. Thy will be done, from Mama. My will, Mama, slower.
That's what I think, though. I think that's the yanking I think that's more of a statement of yanking, like I said, from God.
That's true.
She's almost redirecting her mother's prayers to her to bring them to fruition. You've spent all your time praying how I should die and how your sin you deserve to die. I'm taking the God mantle on myself. You're done.
I'll give it to you.
You're done. I'm done. Everyone's done. I very much, like, King does it a lot, and I don't know, like I said, I think I mentioned this prior to this, that he has this thing where he's mentioned he believes in God, and he's mentioned, like, he's used biblical-esque things in his books, The Stand, but that I think he sometimes amps it up and uses it more intensely than maybe he even means to, and Carrie very much feels like that's she is. We might as well just even point it out because it just becomes a thing. It's hinted at and it becomes a thing afterward because she says it right after this incident. So basically, kills her mom. She stumbles outside with this blade in her. She kind of falls over into her yard, and she mentions this. I'm going to be.
Yeah, I've got it right here if you want me to read it.
The blazing sword.
There was something she was supposed to do, something about, and then in parentheses, roadhouses, parking lots. The angel with the sword, the fiery sword. And then she starts walking. And if you had more, did you have more there?
No, that basically that's the idea I had for what Carrie was doing in relation to her mom. That like sealed it up for me.
Right.
It was literally her just going, okay, I'm. That's what made me think they're not taunting. There's still a strong feeling in my mind that she still thinks she's doing her mom's will. Even her mom dying is her mom's will.
Yeah, I can see that. You got me convinced. But that whole scene, that prayer scene in general, was just really well written.
Yeah.
And then we get a bit of a flashback, or not flashback. We jump back in time a bit, and we see Chris and Billy for the first time in a while since they pulled the rope and ran. And they're just having weird sex.
Not half of it's just abuse, quite literally.
Yeah.
Billy and Chris basically go back to their home above the ransacked bar place.
Specifically, the Roadhouse.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is where
dun.
Yeah. And Billy just manhandles her up to the room, tells her he's just going to plow her whether she likes it or not. She fights back, but you're not actually made aware if she's just wanting it to be terrible and rough, and then or if it's a fight that leads into doing it, and at the end she's just...
Because eventually she goes completely limp, which isn't as clear a sign with Chris, because as we learned in last week's issue of Weird Sex Stuff with Stevie Kings, that's how Chris likes it.
And especially when they get back up. So basically that act happens. They rough do it. They're asleep is the key thing. They're asleep. And one of Billy's friends starts pounding on the door, begging to get in. And I believe Chris wakes up first.
Yeah, it's Jackie.
Yeah, and Chris wakes up first. And then Billy wakes up. And they realize, I think Chris realizes something's wrong at first. It's 1-something. This bar closes at 2. Why is it dead silent?
Right.
Billy realizes the same. There's still some hollering from the door before they take a while to actually get the hell up. It mentions that Billy gets up and answers the door naked for some reason. The friend's like, let me in, and kind of like forces himself into the room. And he basically tells Billy the town's just complete chaos. Everyone knows it's Carrie. Carrie wrecked the school. Everywhere Carrie goes, she wrecks everything. It's absolutely Carrie. Billy says he's full of shit.
Yep.
He tells Billy to look out the window and see for himself. He looks out. The horizon is just on fire.
Yeah.
And he turns back around and is like, I'm going to solve this. And he's like, but wait, Carrie. And he's like, shut up. I don't care. I'm going to go solve this.
Yeah.
So he like kicks the guy out of the room, starts slicking his hair back and getting all prepped. Like he's going out. Yeah. And it does mention the comb he uses has not a single ding or broken tooth in it because it came as a present from his father, who we know nothing about.
That was such a weird thing.
It seemed like a weird hint at his fondness for his father for only 1 sentence.
It was such a weird thing. And I'm glad you brought it up because it totally forgot about it. The comb he used was a battered old ace clotted with grease. His father had given it to him on his 11th birthday, and not one tooth was broken in it. Not one. Like,
repeating that line felt like he was pointing out this comb means a lot to him. He wouldn't let it get damaged because it came from his father.
Except it's described as a battered old thing, which means it's just pure luck that one of it hasn't broken.
But the repetition at the end makes you think...
You can't see the face I'm making, but I would describe it as incredulous.
Yeah.
Like, what is...
He then mentions, like, he's going to get out of this town. Chris asks him what the hell you're going to do, and he's like, well, I'm eventually just going to... I'm going to do what I need to do, and then if they come snooping around to see what I did, it's going to fall on them. I wore gloves. They didn't wear gloves. They'll get caught. If they snitch, I'll flee the town, probably run to California.
Yep.
Chris goes, well, would you take me to California? And he goes, maybe. And then in mind thoughts, he goes, not a chance in hell.
Yeah.
He
smiled. Maybe, but he wouldn't. Not anymore. Come on, we're going to town.
And then they all go. Then they both head out. I believe she starts to say something, and he like knocks her on her ass, like slaps the crap out of her, and she falls on her ass. Because it's at that moment I think she actually like is crying for a bit when they're it might be in the room or it might be as they're leaving. Actually, it might be right before she asks the thing.
It's...
So I'm pretty sure it's afterwards.
He hits her a couple times
all
throughout
over
there. They hit
place.
before the weird sex, they hit after the... Yeah, but like...
Either way, they get to the car. It's not really that important. They get to the car. He starts it up, and they're getting ready to move, and they look out.
Carrie.
Yeah, all of a sudden, like almost like a buzzing in the air that just keeps repeating Carrie, and they look out with their lights on, and they see Carrie, and she's just standing there. They describe her in the dress.
Dripping in blood.
Yeah, she looks like a mess.
See the knife in her shoulder.
Yeah, she's just standing there. And then it describes their reflexes. It says that Chris just kind of dawdles and doesn't seem to react quickly, but Billy, in his quick, fast reflexes, immediately guns the car to go hit her, and then everything goes wrong. The car comes to a grinding halt. It kind of describes the car just being kind of plucked apart in a sense, like the engine is split open. I believe it's jarred so hard that Billy is impaled by the steering wheel pole.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Not the steering wheel, but the steering wheel pole goes through him.
Yeah, it's another excerpt from here. And Billy suddenly felt his car turn traitor, come alive, slither in his hands. The Chevy dug around in a smoking half circle, straight pipes racketing, and suddenly the clapboard side of the Cavalier was swelling, and then they slam into a wall, and then it just goes into detail, like, and then this part exploded, doing this damage to them, and then this rips through his body, and these people are brutalized.
Yeah, she just slaughters them in the car. Yeah, with the car itself. They just get mutilated by the car with the car.
And the thing that really got me about this scene is that they got exactly what they deserved. Totally by happenstance. Because she's there to destroy the roadside. Like, that is it. She's like, this is what caused me. This is what caused my father to, rape my mom. This is what I have to do for my mom. Burn this down. And, yeah, they just got caught up in the crossfire. I want a Carrie-themed crossfire game.
There we go, yeah.
Oh, yeah. But, man, I was very happy when they got their end here, because I was actually kind of afraid they'd slip away. I didn't think so, but, maybe. But yeah, it was a good scene there.
Oh yeah, no, she completely wrecks him. I do believe that afterwards it says that she collapses and is on her side at that point, because isn't this where Sue walks? Shortly after this is where Sue walks up, because it describes that she sees a smoldering piece of crap car and Carrie's on the ground on her side and can't move. I think this is like the final exertion of Carrie is against Billy and them.
Because it ends with her laying down. The last line of that section is, and that was how Sue found her at 2:00.
And then I think that's when we get the Shadows Exploded, in which he makes the point about the...
So we get that with it ends that with that's how Sue found her, and then we see Sue walking towards her. Basically, this is picks up after she left Sheriff. She's like, I don't want to get slapped anymore. I'm leaving this dude. And she's just kind of walking towards where she knows Carrie is. And this is when we get real deep dive into the whole TK telepathy connection. And I really liked how this was written. There was a lot of... I'm talking about our boy, H.P. Lovecraft, or Howie L. Good old Howie L. My number one complaint with Howie L, other than the racism and that, I'm just not pushing that to the side. With his actual writing style, is I can only hear it was so horrible and incomprehensible I can't even describe it a limited number of times before I just am like, stop cheating. You're an author. Literally, your job is to use words to tell me what things are like. After you've done it 90 times, I'm done. I can't even. It's like, try. There is a single line in this that I was just like, okay, cool. At least Stevie King's tries. And it's when she's walking along and we get this, she gets a picture of Carrie in the state she was in the last scene, where she's laying on the road, battered to shit. And it does the parentheses injection thing, and it just says, watched, thought, doesn't matter. And it's such a small line, because she's trying to understand, wait, did I think that, or did I see it? and her mind can't cope with what's happening, but at least he tries, as opposed to like, I can't explain it. It's like you at least got some internal like thought of, well, this is like trying to explain it but failing, which I think is so much better than I'm not even gonna try, because it didn't feel like as much of a cop out. It still put my mind in the same place that Sue was gonna be, where it's so horrible I can't even describe it. Could be literally anything.
That's true.
And in the case of Lovecraft, could just be like a dead body that was out for 2 weeks. Like there's it.
I think it's the impersonalness of Lovecraft that makes him repeat that stuff over and over again. Where like in that instance, it's not even something that's describing that's incomprehensibly horrible due to some nature of it, but rather just conveying that
the human mind can't do, so it's hard to understand.
Yeah.
I like that attempt, and I just wanted to put that out there. As much shit as I give Stevie King's, you got one up on Hal Yow. I'll give it to you, buddy. I'll give it to you. You know what? If you're ever in town, I'll buy you a 10-cent root beer. I don't know where. You know, actually, come down. I'll buy you a JoJo sundae.
There you go.
Literally no one who lives outside this town, I think. Is that a thing, or is that what they call it? I'm probably gonna cut all this out.
I don't know.
I don't know if that's a real thing, or if it's just with that one random ass drugstore.
I get the feeling it's just that one drugstore.
Well, in case it's not a thing, it's ice cream and peanut butter, and then marshmallow fluff, and then I believe it was like hot chocolate syrup on top. That drugstore.
Maybe our local town is the perfect town to invent a bunch of nonsense, like what happens in the King
That's
of
true.
Us.
I mean, and if we write a book and it gets made into a movie, we can just cast Stephen King in the role of the soda jerk.
That's true.
Okay. We got off topic. Let's get back in here. So not much happens in this other than her realizing she just understands Carrie. Like, she just gains an innate understanding of, like, parts of Carrie's life. That she knows Carrie's mom's dead. She knows Carrie did it. She knows Carrie's dying. And she's getting to Carrie.
Yep.
And then we do get that shadow exploded that I never looked up what it was.
Is that the one where he's just stating how to cope with people having TK powers?
Yep. Then it goes straight into the testimony.
Okay, yeah, because this is basically where he goes, okay, don't get this twisted. TK powers are the TK gene is a confirmed scientific fact in the Kingverse. We know it, we've isolated it, we can even test people for it. But what he proposes in this is, what should you do about that if you can? Do we test every kid who hits puberty and shows a hint of power? At that point, then what do we do with them? If they're all dangerous, we can't lock them all away. We can't kill them all.
Yeah, he compares it to TB. Like, we test for TB, but if someone has TB, you put them in isolation until they're better.
Yeah, there's a sort of vaccination step to this process, and then we let them back into society. There does not appear to be such a thing, because the TK gene is not a disease. It's literally a part of the person. You might just destroy the person genetically on that level by trying to do something to that gene. So
we get the X-Men problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So basically he leaves that up to you. He kind of goes like, here's the many things that'll never happen.
Right.
What do we do about this?
And then there's like one sentence in this that is then when we start kind of getting a tone shift on the White Commission. And this happened a lot with the Shadows Exploded. We got a tone shift. It was to the like, no longer just a kind of dispassionate scientific exploration of this event, more of a, and now to my point, what the fuck do we do?
Yeah. TK is dangerous from the perspective of Shadows Exploded.
So we get the, basically, what are we, how are we going to deal with this? You know, if a kid has TK, can we really rip them away from their parents? Are they going to be okay with that? And we get the line of, I doubt it, especially when the White Commission has worked so hard to convince the public that the Nightmare in Chamberlain was a complete fluke.
Yeah.
And that's where we're like, oh, this is where it clicked for me, is like, oh, these two are competing. Like, these are fighting each other.
TK is absolutely real, but the positions they hold are TK's Shadows Exploded, TK insanely dangerous. You need to figure out what to do about this. Any person with TK could be doing this anywhere else in the world.
Right.
White Commission, you're all blowing this out of proportion. TK is real, but you're all attributing all of this crazy stuff to her. This is not explicitly said, but the kind of subtle impression I'm getting from the White Commission, if they're acknowledging the TK power being real, is that maybe Carrie's psychic power was rather to delude everyone. Because, like, the impression I'm getting from the White Commission, because from up to this point, ignoring part 3 entirely, what you're left at this point in the book is the White Commission seems to not necessarily disagree with TK powers, or at least some mental thing, but rather that if this whole connection and mental thing was going on, that it was more of a fluke, as in, this was a mental trick.
Right.
Carrie was not running around annihilating the town, but rather a series of accidents occurred, and Carrie's mental power made everyone think she was doing it.
Right.
Something along those lines. That's not explicitly stated anywhere in this book, but that's like the realm of idea, because specifically that the guy in Shadows Exploded seems to worry that the White Commission is downplaying it. Even though we know TK is real, they must be like, yeah, the incident happened, but it was not all Carrie. You all need to calm down. Da, 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 da.
Yeah. And then from there, from that Shadows Exploded excerpt, we jump to the testimony for Susan. And actually, I have this up since we were talking about it earlier. From the sworn testimony of Susan Snell, taken before the State Investigatory Board of Maine, from the White Commission report.
Board of Maine, yeah.
Which, at this point, we're up to page 472 of the White Commission report. So, big old document. And this bit was interesting.
Well, it was like 2 parts, the first one being kind of short. She essentially tells them, I've told you all this 1,000 times. What game are you playing? Why do you all keep asking me these questions? Are you trying to find a hole in what I'm saying to call us all liars? You've heard this before. She kind of bursts on them, and then it goes, I forget the phrase they use, but they recess. They recess for a while, and then they come back, and they're like, Susan, are you now willing to tell us what we asked? Da, da, da. And she's like, okay, I'll tell you. And then they proceed to ask the same kind of questions they've been asking everyone else. What they, how did you know? That's the same kind of like what was the setup?
Yep.
I think to Sue's sort of relationship. Now
you testified earlier that you knew you were getting closer to Carrie. Yeah. Can you explain this? Yeah. No, I love that. I like Sue at this point because you can tell she's just done with this shit. It's just, could you smell her? What? Did you follow your nose? Laughter in the galleries. Just I like that little throw in there. And
she basically gets annoyed that it's pretty clear they're trying to accuse her of some tomfoolery and not actually being honest. And she just kind of goes, no, remember this person telling you? Remember this person telling you? Remember this person telling you? We're not all lying. This is literally how it happens. I don't know how to explain it to you. In the proximity of Carrie, you know. That's it. Yep.
And like she makes a really good point because while they ask everyone else to, like, every other testimony has those moments of, yeah, I knew this. They're like, how? And they're like, I don't know. And then they didn't keep pushing. But with Sue, it's a constant, yeah, but you need to explain that. Like, how did you know? It can't be explained. No, you need to. They didn't, but you do. And there was one other bit, and I can't remember where this threw in, but there was a point at which someone was asking who was there, and I think it might have been during the testimony with it was one of the other testimonies, but they made a point to ask questions specifically about Sue, and it just gave me the vibe that they were trying to pin it all on Sue.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I didn't see much more come up to support that other than just the tone of this.
They used the fact that Sue knew where Carrie was and all this stuff. You get the impression they're kind of going, how else would she know unless she killed Carrie? Maybe this was all an elaborate ploy by Sue and using Carrie as, the scapegoat. Once again, you're reading into this. The book says nothing explicitly, but you're getting that impression, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And she basically comes down to like, okay, how did I find Carrie? She was drawing people to her. Like
they make the comment, why didn't anyone else go to her?
And that's where we get your sphere.
And that's where Sue's like, well, she was dying. Her sphere was probably shrinking. I was the only one close enough to even hear her anymore.
Yeah. And then from there, not much more in there. We jump into her coming across Carrie.
And she comes across essentially the end scene of the Billy Chris.
She comes across an essence of Carrie, a gestalt. I believe she was a barbarian?
Something like that.
Sorcerer barbarian? Maybe?
Sonics.
Yeah. Ooh, gestalting psionics. Yeah. All right. We basically learned that Carrie's a power gamer. No, but I loved this scene. I'm going to go ahead and roll with this because I'm going to interject some stuff on this.
Okay, so this is the final scene. So
yeah.
She comes across Carrie. She looks down. She comes across her. The car's in mangled, smoking heap. Carrie's on the ground on her side with the knife in her back. She says that when she sees Carrie, she kind of feels bad for her because she could tell that Carrie and all the flexing and power Carrie had demonstrated this entire chaotic event, Carrie can't muster enough energy to even roll herself over. She's literally stuck on her side.
Yep.
So Sue walks over to her and slowly pulls her around, and Carrie looks up at her and just kind of like, But at this moment, you actually see this sort of mind click.
Well, right before that, she realizes, oh shit, Carrie's gonna kill me. Because Carrie, I can't remember what exactly she says. She's like, you tricked me. And Sue's like, oh, right. This is a rage monster. And she's like, no, I didn't. Look in my mind. And that's when they connect. And Carrie starts...
I mean, even prior... They connect prior even to that. It's not even the...
Oh, I thought that... Oh.
It's not even the look in my mind. It goes all the way back to before she even does anything. What happens is she flips her over. Carrie goes, oh, what are you doing here? And, like, it actually states that at that moment, Sue says something back to her in her mind, back to Carrie. And they actually, at this point, begin to fully dialogue in their heads.
Right. So I was thinking of when she starts searching.
Oh, yeah. No, that's yeah. At first, they're just dialoguing back and forth, and Carrie goes, like, trick, you beat me. This was the final trick. You all finally beat me. And she's like, no, I'm not a part of that. I didn't mean to do that. You know, Tommy, because Carrie even seems mad at Tommy as if he could have possibly been involved in this. And she's like, no, I asked Tommy, blah, blah, blah. She kind of sets up, she's trying to explain it, and it's Carrie not believing her, even after saying things that leads to the bond you're talking about, the actual look into my mind thing.
There's a great moment that, because she starts feeling and seeing all these different scenes of like Carrie being tricked in her own head. And it's such a great line. They shared the awful totality of perfect knowledge. I really enjoyed that line. And yeah, from there we get into the like Sue being like, look in my head, see that I didn't trick you. And we get a great description that those who have read Dreamcatcher, the linchpin of the Stephen King universe, will be familiar with, which is like the mind library. Like I loved that in Dreamcatcher, and in here we just get like, on a shelf and Carrie taking that book and looking through the Carrie book. And it's a really cool amount of honesty, because like in there she finds that Sue thinks she's kind of gross and kind of disgusting, but didn't do this.
Well, like a combo of things. It's actually kind of a peppering. She finds out that she thinks Carrie's gross, but she also finds out that she knows that if she ever got a little better looking or fixed a few things, she would be attracted to it. What you see is this constant flip-flop.
Right.
It's Sue didn't mean any ill to me, but she thinks I'm gross. She thinks I could look better, but at the same time she doesn't care about me. Like, she actually did tell Tommy to do this, and she meant it for Tommy to take me, and it was actually sincerely done. And it's just this,
we also get the like, and she mainly did it to make herself feel better, but it still wasn't malicious.
Yeah. Kind of a compliment or negative sandwich. You keep getting bounced back and forth between the
what I kind of loved about this is you're getting the feeling that Sue is also seeing this. So like this whole time where she's been kind of like, am I doing this because I want to help Carrie, or am I doing this because I want to feel better? And then Carrie's like, oh yeah, I looked in your mind. It's because you wanted to feel better. And Sue's like, oh, okay, cool. So
this
like,
is actually where it gets
Sue
into
coming to some conclusions
and towards
too.
the end of that digging through, Sue actually just starts to like pretty explicitly point out this is actually a terrible feeling.
Yeah,
letting Carrie dig through like this, and she actually starts to try to shove. You got it, Carrie. You see, I don't mean malicious. Now, can you like back out of my mind? And you're getting a little out of hand. With
Carrie just kind of latches on tighter and starts to die.
Yeah,
and I have a question here, because I read this little bit over and over. I thought it was great, because Sue starts yelling out like, Carrie, no, I can't feel this. You can't make me feel this. I can't go through literally the experience of dying and live through it. And Carrie just doesn't let go and dies. Do you think Carrie couldn't let go? Or do you think Carrie was like, I'm not going to kill you, but I am still going to punish you? Because I don't think it is explicit either way.
It's weird because pair with that, isn't that when she also finally does her last gasp of mama? I kind of feel like her yank on Sue was a yank on mama.
Yeah, it's, oh, mama,
Simba.
I'm scared. Mama, mama.
I think it's the same thing when you watch a World War II movie and you see the guy shouting for his mom as he grabs his brother and dies in front of him. I feel like that's what happened. I think she couldn't let go of Sue because she was dying and didn't want to let go to anyone. She probably would have preferred it had been her mom, and her mom didn't want to kill her.
Right.
But because I got the feeling that as she was getting home, there was a microscopic chance that she may have been like, if my mom turns a leaf, maybe I will, but she knew it wasn't going to happen.
I think so, with that, like, her being willing to pray.
Yeah, I feel like if her mom had done a 180, Carrie would have done a 180, but her mom didn't do diddly squat, so neither did Carrie.
So you think this is she's not letting go because she needs the comfort and doesn't want to be alone. Okay.
I think she doesn't want to be alone, and I think that calling out from mom is all together in a bundle. I don't think she meant to punish Sue, because I think Carrie doesn't react much to state how she felt about poking through her head, but Carrie, the perfect knowledge, if you will, Carrie knows she didn't mean anything malicious. Right. So I don't think Carrie meant to hurt her in the end deliberately. Okay. I think it was literally your death throes, you grab onto someone.
Yeah, I think that's totally valid.
Yeah.
And then to end this scene, we basically get
Sue stumbles off in a broken, shambled form because she's remembering Tommy's died. She just suffered mental death herself with Carrie.
And to top it all off, she starts her period.
Yeah, she walks out into the yard, and then it says menstrual blood runs down her leg.
And then turn the page, and it's part 3. I think it's called Aftermath or Wreckage. Yeah. Wreckage, which we'll talk about on the next one. And overall thoughts in this section?
It was entertaining, even though I felt like you probably would know all of what was happening. Nothing surprised me or was different, but it was well done.
I wasn't expecting Sue to touch the void. That part, that intense connection between the two of them, I expected there to be a scene with the two of them at her death. I did not expect it to be that intense.
I guess no, not specifically. I guess it would have more if it like Sue went on. The Sue wrapping around by then showing up in excerpts in the book kind of felt like you got her end and her. It was an interesting cross point.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess in getting no information about Sue other than she just moved somewhere and had a regular life afterwards made it kind of odd. Because you go back earlier and you get Sue making comments about how she's almost deliberately forgotten most of everything from there. So I'm wondering if maybe even a bit she's forgot about dying.
Right. Overall, I enjoyed this part of the book a lot. It retroactively made me enjoy most of the book more.
A lot of everything leading up to this point seemed like it was deliberately trying to make it sound like the ending would have been more complex, twisty, and weird. But then the ending just confirms it was as linear as it looked. Yeah. You were literally getting what the movie is generally taking advantage of. You're literally just getting, in a fundamental sense, a messed with girl who goes apeshit.
Right.
That's ultimately what you're getting from beginning to end. There's no real goofy trick to it. There's no funny stuff.
But I think the thing that makes it stand up is just the moment-to-moment writing in this part is just really good, in my opinion. I loved it. And that's where I'm always pulled in with Stephen King. I always have some real intense complaints, and then just there's always a couple things that are just like, dude, my dude, you need to find yourself some Jesus real quick. But God, his moment-to-moment writing tends to be great.
Yeah, no, it was I'm actually glad it was more like this than any kind of weird something people like. To me, the worst ending could have been if like a decent healthy batch of people had lived and took it upon themselves to stop Carrie, and then it had turned into some micro action thing, which it very well could have in a King sense. King does that kind of nonsense too,
right?
But the fact that it just escalates and bombs like that, so that Sue's pretty much all that's left. I want
to take a few minutes here to just talk about the end of the movie real quick. I guess if you're listening to this and care about spoilers, you're weird, so I don't care. So we'll roll with that. I guess you could turn it off. But I just want to point out that at the end of the movie Carrie, we get Sue at Carrie's grave, and it ends with Carrie's hand bursting through the dirt. So I can say this is a better ending. We'll give it that.
Oh yeah, by far.
Yeah.
As I said, Carrie was. I mean, it's the movifying of Stephen King. Every time one of his books or stuff gets turned into a movie, it's got to be like made slightly tweaked enough to be isolated, so you don't call it the book.
And Stephen King effectively uses internal monologues, which is just real hard to do in a movie. So, like in the movie, I haven't seen the movie in years. Once again, but in the movie, like.
You're talking about the original one too, right?
I have not seen the remake. Yeah. Though at some point we should watch the musical. We'll have a guest on for that. Yeah. But in the movie, like I feel like you could walk away with it, left with the feeling that I was hoping I'd get for Carrie in this, in that she was a teenager who went too far. Where with the internal monologue, there's the villain moment. We see the escalation. We see her thought process. There's a point at which she's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna kill people.
Yeah, she's literally, I'm the angel with the burning sword. You're all gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah. Any other bits on this before we start the wrap up here?
No, pretty much. We'll do the not just the lore and the Kingiverse stuff, but the general. I guess what might almost amount to a rating in the next part. Yeah, we'll
give a rating. We'll also. This is going to be more exciting later, but we'll be revealing our next book.
This final sort of, when we're done the book kind of wrap up thing for each book, we'll get just cumulatively more exciting because it's a lore building thing.
Exactly.
Too. Once we get enough books under our belt, we'll have a base lore to start comparing stuff massively to.
Yeah, and at that point, like I'm hoping to get to the point where we have to run a Patreon just to be able to afford all the thumbtacks and yarn we're going to need for this project.
This is the super conspiracy of conspiracies.
Like we're going to have to rent out an office building because there just won't be enough space in here to like contain this whole.
We're going to eventually prove that King makes contact with aliens on a regular basis to write this universe.
Oh yeah. I'm going to leave you with one little thought, just a preview, because I actually managed to do it. I barely talked about Dreamcatcher.
You did, yeah.
The linchpin in the Stephen King universe. But for those who have seen it, I'm just going to make one quick point here, and I think it's irrefutable. TK, Mr. Gray. But I guess until next time, I've been local heartthrob Tommy Ross, and I'm too good for this book. Hole in the Wall Book Club is a part of the icynewyear Productions Network, and produced and edited by Anthony Sheets. The music in this episode is Supernatural Radio by Kevin MacLeod. There'll be a link to his license and website in the show notes. If you want to get a hold of us, tweet us at icynewyear or send an email to icynewyear@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to tell a friend or leave us a review on your podcatcher of choice. Word of mouth and 5-star reviews really help us get out in front of more people and let us expand and do more things. More information on the show can be found on icynewyear.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.